Molweni, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nobisa Makunga. I'm the editor of the Sowetan newspaper here in Johannesburg. And today I'm really privileged to be part of this conversation, to be facilitating what I truly believe is a very important conversation hosted by the Transnet Ports Authority. We're talking disruption. We're talking the fourth industrial revolution. This year has really been something phenomenal. COVID-19 has not only disrupted us, but also it has really kind of forced us, because of lockdown, it has forced us to do things differently, to adapt and to find new ways of not just living, but new ways of doing business. I want to welcome you, whether you're joining us from our Vimeo link or our MS Teams or Zoom or Transnet social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I want to say thank you so much for gracing us. We've got a jam-packed hour and a half for you, which I'm absolutely looking forward to. You're more than welcome, of course, to join the conversation. You can use the platforms on which you are joining us. Alternatively, you can use share your views or your questions to our WhatsApp line, which is 060. It should be coming up on your screen now, 060 3498 195. Our WhatsApp line is 060 3498 195. As I say, it's a jam-packed one, and this conversation happens not only, it's Heritage Month in South Africa. It's a month where we celebrate who we are, our identity and our being, but it's also, and I've since learned that it's a World Maritime Day on the 24th of this month, and the theme that I'm told is sustainable shipping for a sustainable planet. I'm really hoping some of the panelists that we have today will really kind of unpack, touch on that, what it basically means. It's something that is so important, not only for Transnet Ports Authority or the maritime industry, but really for our economy as it is in this country. So now I'm going to introduce our panelists who've got some insights to share with you. It's a group of people who've been specifically chosen really because of their background, what they know. Their CVs are quite impressive. I've had a look at some of them. I want to introduce first Mr. Mutle Lentle, who is the Chief Information Officer of Transnet National Ports Authority. He will be joined by Captain Naresh Suneth, who is the Senior Manager for Pilotage and Vessel Traffic Services at Transnet Ports Authority. Ugamawam will join us, Nobisa Matoti, who is the Senior Manager of Operation Pagisa Skills Initiative at SAMI. She'll also be joined by Lwandile Mabuza, who is the Managing Director of Service South Africa, the Marine Division. And last but most definitely not least, we will be joined by Lance Pullen, who is the Managing Director of LearnerNet. I want to say a special welcome to all our panelists. You will meet them and they will talk to you in a moment. But before we do that, there's a short video that we really like to play from the Transnet team. I hope the video is ready. If you're joining us, do have a look. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that clip. Have you ever wondered really what the history and evolution of the Transnet National Ports Authority? I've personally wondered what its responsibilities and obviously its role in the South African maritime sector. You kind of understand these things, but not very much, from a granular point of view. And today, Captain Naresh will really kind of unpack this topic for us. I want to introduce him and ask him to come forth and share his screen. Captain Naresh, over to you. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Wabisa. Good morning to everybody present, and thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of the history and evolution of TNPA I will also be doing some of the, speaking around the key milestones that Transnet National Ports Authority has achieved over the years. And, okay, we'll do. And also looking at internationally what is happening around the world in terms of technology, as well as the way shipping is in terms of sustainable shipping for a sustainable planet. So it is a great pleasure, I think, to be in front of you to basically do a presentation in terms of what I'm going to project. I'm just trying to quickly get it through here. Okay, I have it. Thank you very much. And yeah, in terms of the evolution, in terms of the also Transnet National Ports Authority role in South Africa and the global maritime sector. In 1970, the government decided that South African railways and harbours be restructured along business lines. And then in 1981, renamed South African Transport, renamed as South African Transport Services, with separate divisions for railway, harbour, road, transport, aviation, and pipeline operations. In April of 1990, after 80 years of government and parliamentary control, South African Transport Services was given company status, then called Transnet State-Owned Company Limited. And between 1990 and 2004, this is 1999, where TNPA's Maritime Radical Transformation voyage actually commenced. So from 2004, Transnet focused on freight logistics provider proposition, Transnet to respond adequately to the government's economic challenges. And this led to the introduction of a brand in 2007 to signal a focused, integrated, and revitalized Transnet, which included Transnet National Ports Authority, Transnet Port Terminals, Transnet Freight Rail, Transnet Engineering, and Transnet Pipelines. As you'll see, the port system, in terms of Transnet National Ports Authority, manages and operates 8 ports along the South African coast, and the coastline is approximately 3,500 kilometers. We have Richards Bay, Durban, East London, and Nuga on the eastern side, and then we have Mossel Bay, Cape Town, and Saldanha on the western side. Excuse me. Now some of the key milestones in terms of Transnet National Ports Authority, where we have achieved quite a bit, I think, in terms of training, infrastructure transformation, fleet acquisition, technology, and aviation as well. And in terms of training, I think there was great strides made in terms of marine pilot, especially where they fast-tracked the marine pilot training in 1999 with a team of 12 called the class of 1999, 12 trainee pilots that went to Rotterdam and returned to become pilots in South Africa. Previously, it used to take years for a pilot to qualify, close to, we call it 6-7 years, I think. And this program actually was spearheaded by Commander Setsi Mokele, and he basically shortened this period with the mitigation measures in place as well, putting in a bridging course as well that assisted the pilots, simulator system as well too. So that also was recognized as well later on, not just by IMO only, but SAMHSA as well. So there's been great strides, and also on the VTS side, there's also quite a bit of technology that's been used as well. And on the port operations, H2 navigation, national H2 navigation on level 1 manager's course that was also done in South Africa for international guests. I will show you later on in the picture in terms of the people that attended that course as well, spearheaded by David Gordon from the Lighthouse Navigation Services. And then on infrastructure development, I think the port of Nuha that was developed that actually was built in 2009, which is the newest port at the moment. The Durban entrance channel widening, and quite a few other smaller projects, I think, that occurred in terms of infrastructure development. The transformation in terms of class of 1999, where we had the 12 trainee pilots that went to Rotterdam for training, and out of that, I think we also have the first female harbour master in 2007, Captain Nancy Shazi, and then in 2012, the first black chief harbour master, Captain Rufus Lekala. In terms of technology, we got the pilot simulator, dredging simulators, IPMS, underkeel clearance, joint operations centers, BTS upgrades, and a whole host of other technology stuff that has come, even trials on drones and so on as well. And then on a fleet acquisition, I think we've made huge strides in terms of advanced technology in terms of the tugs, from the steam tugs right up to diesel and diesel electric tugs as well. So the fleet renewal not only involved the tugs but also the dredging fleet. We now have 3 dredges that are top of the class in terms of dredging, and work efficiently in terms of making sure that the ports have adequate depth for the huge ships that are calling the ports. On the aviation side, there's a marine pilot transfer insourcing, also the insourcing of the service, where previously it used to be done by Balmoral and AK Aviation. We're now looking at, from 2014 onwards, training. We've trained pilots and engineering technicians in terms of providing that service in-house now. And there's acquisition of new helicopters, 2 were delivered in 2019 for the ports of Durban and Richards Bay, and they assist quite a lot in terms of when there's adverse weather conditions, and also more faster in terms of transfer of pilots from shore to ship and ship to shore, vice versa. And there's also the now a new proposal in terms of Port of Cape Town, where this service will be extended to that port as well. This is basically the port of Nuha, the administration building, new, looking quite fantastic, I think. It's one of the newest buildings that have the port, from the Port Authority side. And this is the class of 1999. The first 12 non-white trainee pilots and the 4 masters went to training in Rotterdam. And the transformed TNPA, a picture in 2013 taken, and we look at the number of females that are there, from deputy harbour masters, pilots, and even harbour masters as well. Yeah, on the left-hand side is the BTS simulator that has been built up in or implemented in the Port of Cape Town. On the right-hand side is the joint operations centers that we have in all the ports. And at the bottom is the DMAX, which is your underkeel clearance system, which assists with deeper draft vessels coming into the port and providing a safe clearance for those vessels. This is South Africa's first IALA-Level 1 H2 navigation training. As you see, the participants were from South Africa, Namibia, Ghana, Kenya, and Madagascar. And the integrated port management system, which from 2013 to 2015 has been developed in-house, customized for Transnet National Ports Authority. And the objective is to eliminate paperwork and have a single window operating system on the web with automated inputs and near real-time information on shipping and operations. Now, the interesting one is in terms of the Transnet National Ports Authority fleet evolution, looking at the Yolandi on the left-hand side, which was built in 1927 and has close to 16 to 20 crew, steam-powered. Then you had the J.A. Kruger on the right-hand side, which is a Voigt Schneider tug, diesel, the first one in 1972. Then it went to the Voigt Schneider tugs in terms of these tugs actually have only 6 crew. Okay. Basically has the diesel 6 crew. So from 16 to 20 crew at that time, now you're right down to 6 crew. So there's a huge automation and optimization, I think, of the resources that we have. And of course, the pallet boats that are transfer the pallets. And this Yolandi actually, at that time, was used dual for transfer of the pallet as well as assisting the ships coming in and going out of the ports as well. But due to safety reasons, I think we've split that to make sure that pallets are safely transported to and from, and also the use of helicopters. This is a ship simulator at the Maritime School of Excellence in Durban. This is live in terms of when you're approaching the port of Cape Town. You can see the entrance there. And it basically has all the functionality that you would have on a ship, and gives you close to real sort of situations in terms of your weather patterns. You can also adjust them and sort of increase the wave heights and wind speeds and so on. On the maritime pilot service, which was from 2002 to 2014, this service was outsourced to Barrymore and then AK Aviation. But from 2014 onwards, there's a development of the in-house helicopter pilot transfer services and training of engineering technicians. And like I mentioned, they are currently operating in Richards Bay and Durban, and we will expand to Cape Town in 21 or 22. So we purchased 2 new helicopters and in 2019, and there will be another 3 helicopters purchased going forward as well, for replacement as well as additional one new for Cape Town. Now, in terms of international developments, there's been quite a few things that have been happening around internationally. Thank you. The appointment, I think, of Captain Sunat as myself as a Vice President outside Europe to the International Harbour Masters Association, digitalization of shipping, autonomous vessels, in terms of IMO also developing regulations around that, climate change initiatives and the formation of climate change clusters in the ports, the implementation of the IMO sulfur fuel for ships, and development of the African Harbour Masters Committee, and of course the COVID-19, which has taken center stage now. This is just basically evolution in terms of the ships, of the container vessels, and the largest one now is the HMM Algeciras, with a length of 400 meters, 16.5 meter draft, and 23,964 TEU. For the future, what does the future hold? So Transnet National Port Authority and Transnet is a vehicle of the state to facilitate trade and also unlock economic growth of the country through reducing the cost of doing business and also facilitating global competitive transport and logistic system. So we're looking at futuristic ports solution, integrated supply chain solutions, and green ports as well. So we had a focused port authority, improved efficiency, attracting cargo volumes, and the focus is on meeting capital execution, addressing climate change, re-engineering business, and embracing the 4th industrial revolution, which is automation and integration systems, with the visibility of total supply chain, which is for us. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Harish. I thought that was quite insightful. But for me, I think you tell a story of the evolution of the organization, not only from a transformational point of view, but it really, in terms of innovation. But I've got a question here that I'd like to pose to you. And it's a question from Nozipho Dlepo. Hi, Nozipho, I hope you're watching us. And it's to you, Captain, and it's really kind of asking, it captures really what I think a lot of people would want to know. And it's, how do you think the 4th industrial revolution, would support maritime supply chain readiness and innovation? And I think if I were to put it simply, how do we do business using, this revolution that we find ourselves in particular when it comes to maritime supply chain, Captain?
Thank you for that question. That's a very intriguing question. Interesting, I think, in terms of where we see ourselves currently. And as TNPA is continuously seeking new ways of doing things safely, efficiently, and with optimized use of resources, so we have to look at new technology and new advancements in what we're doing. So the fourth industrial revolution is all about technology and how best to use it to our advantage. That is integration of systems, especially between ports and port users, which has a great advantage for everyone in terms of planning and optimization of the resources. Vessel agents, transporters, cargo owners, vessel state agencies, all form a critical role in the maritime industry. And once you have an integrated system in place, the supply chain will be able to flow more smoothly with little human interference and more efficient services for the customer. We need to put the customer first in all that we do, and what works for the customer, we need to design that for the customer as well. So that will be more user-friendly as well, and not only just sitting behind the computer full in loads of information. We must look at how we can integrate other systems to assist this customer to get that information in for them as well, and make it a more holistic kind of view, or a single platform. So automation of manual processes will ultimately also lead to the innovation in the way we do business as well, and innovation improving training, courses online, port information online for easy access, digitalization of the maritime sector as well, which improves communication and more efficient services. So one of the things is slow steaming. If you're aware that the berth is not available and will not be available for a later date, adjust the speed lower, which will result in lower consumption, fuel consumption, and also lower fuel costs as well. IPMS, which is Integrated Port Management System, for example, has quite a bit of relevant information for relevant stakeholders. And looking at the ISPS clearance, for example, the port health clearance, IMG approvals. So these are all technological and advancements I think we can look at in systems where we can also assist in terms of making sure the supply chain is supply chain readiness, and it's more effective, and there's innovation as well involved. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Captain. If you've just joined us, we are discussing the fourth industrial revolution and what it means for the maritime industry. And the next person I'd like to call is probably a man who knows all about it. He has been instrumental in the rollout of the Transnet Ports Authority's own digital technologies, as well as smart ports initiatives. Mr. Motle Lintle, please take to the floor and join us and give us your presentation. He is the Chief Information Officer of TNPA.
Thank you, Nobisa, and good morning to all our guests throughout the entire country. And I'm hoping that the colleagues from out of town, the Port Management Association of East and Southern Africa, managed to join us as well. I will take you through a short presentation. So hold on a second. Okay. I'll take you through this short presentation that touches on the whole advent of Industry 4.0, or the fourth industrial revolution as it's known. In terms of background, we had Industry 1, which was the use of water and steam power to mechanize production. This was in the 17th century. Then in the 18th century, Industry 2.0, which was the introduction of electricity, which enabled mass production. And then in the 19th century, we looked at Industry 3.0, which was the use of IT and use of computing and the internet to digitize production and distribution and services. We are now into what we call Industry 4.0, which is where we are now beginning to merge the real world and the virtual worlds. It's the application of things called artificial intelligence, data science, advanced analytics, machine learning, and ubiquitous digital networks and cyber-physical systems that have become the norm as we go forth. It is made up of 4 mega trends that came with it. We have these 4 mega trends that work together. In the past, you would have one trend. In this case, you have these 4 mega trends that work together to make up the 4IR, which is cloud computing, and I'll explain them, which is mobile computing, which is social networks, your Facebooks and your WhatsApps, and then your big data. And what we're saying is that technology limitations are beginning to recede exponentially, and limitations will be our own imaginations. So where the technological limitations are receding, you have what we call now hyperconnectivity. Every machine is connected, humans are connected, disrupting all the established rules in business channels. And this connectivity is beginning to give users or customers more choices in terms of how they select, the choices they make in terms of goods, services, people, any knowledge, and how they apply wealth. And then you have supercomputing, where the limitations around computer power have receded quite exponentially. And you now have supercomputers and in-memory computing that allows for creation of infinite new business capabilities. Cloud computing has removed limitations on usage of computer infrastructure. And then we get into the smarter world, your sensors, your robotics, your artificial intelligence, data science, machine learning, they become the new norm. But in contrast as well, data has become the new currency, and because data has become the new currency, investments have also got to be shifted towards cybersecurity, where we're now trying to combat attacks using data, and attacks that are meant to disrupt business and to use data for nefarious activities. Some of the things that have now begin to permeate this technology trend is your wireless communication network, Internet of Things, which is the ambient experience, where machine is talking to machine, connected via wireless, your big data, virtual reality, your artificial intelligence and robotics, augmented reality, wearables, which we want to use on the maritime side, and I'll explain that later, your mobile apps, which I've spoken about, drone technology, which we've tested in our ports, and which we've created some use cases for sensor technology and 3D printing and scanning. So why are we doing all of this? Our reaction to 4IR, we want to create a real-time integrated view of the South African transport logistic chain, not limited to just the ports, but looking at activities on the water side and activities on the land side, connecting everything that is part of the logistics chain. And we want to be competitive. We want to be world-class. We want to be efficient. These are some of the things that resonate with what is called the Logistics Performance Index by the World Bank. They measure us on how efficient we are as a logistics system. So we are looking at creating, using 4IR, creating a world-class logistics operation that will proactively provide integrated real-time information to drive decisions, not limited to us, but right across the spectrum for efficient decision making. What have we done? We started slowly by looking at how we stabilize the foundation, made investments for our back office to make sure that all our internal processes are working and the back office can begin to support what happens on the front line. And then, as you heard from Captain Naresh, between 2013 and 2015, we embarked on this ambitious project called the Integrated Port Management System, where we standardized automated operational processes. We created the 24/7 web-enabled connectivity from anywhere in the world for us to be able to transact with our customers. And this was more for the marine operations automation. We went a step further in 2016, between 2016 and 2017, where we introduced a 24/7 e-commerce multi-omnichannel platform for customer self-service right across the entire port system. And this was to give our customers an opportunity to make choices on their own and expose them to transactional layer where they can make choices on how they want to interact with Transnet. And this was for obviously operational improvement and improved customer experience. We've embarked on the Smart People Sports, and I will elaborate more on that. We've embarked on the Smart People Sports to create access to high integrity real-time data, to collaborate with our stakeholders for mutual benefit, to integrate the communities around the ports and those that integrate with the ports, to elevate our ports to global standards and to make them marketable. And lastly, to improve the service predictability and reliability. And we embarked on all of this to achieve a number of things. We believe that with integrated planning throughout the value chain, it will reduce the latency of how we actually transact and reduce some redundancies in some of our processes. We want to introduce process discipline. This is a very limited resource that we have with a limited capacity. It has to be used efficiently for the use of the entire ecosystem, and we need to manage certain type of disciplines as we do that. We want everybody to see the same thing, whoever is monitoring, so there is no ambiguity in terms of what information is there. Everybody needs to use the same information. We want to be able to manage deviation effectively. Information flow has got to be real time and be usable by all within the same ecosystem, solve problems whenever we have redundancies within the system. And ideally, we'd like to get to a point where we have synchronized execution throughout the entire value chain, from pit to port, as we call it, and measure how we actually do that. So as we move on, this is a busy slide, but it will make sense. This is the end game that we're looking at. We want to have operations transparency, as I've said. It's an import operations. We want to see our imports and exports trade flow. We want to look at the whole traffic flow from vessels on the water side to trucks and rail on the land side. We want to create those connected logistics that could be agnostically connected using technology that is made available by the fourth industrial revolution. We want our port assets to start talking to us by creating capability for it to connect, creating capability for us to conduct security and to manage security from anywhere. We want to create predictability of service around our infrastructure, looking at conditional assessment of our infrastructure. And for us to be able to do that, we have to find ways of making the actual equipment start talking. And 4IR has enabled us to do that, because you can have sensors, you can have wireless networks, you can have mobile devices fitted to most of the port infrastructure. We want to monitor port activity and anything that happens in the port. We want those intelligent business operations to happen with very minimal human intervention throughout the port system, and provide critical time port information that will enhance the way that we actually do business within the port. We've created this evolution map to say, given 4IR and what 4IR can give us, how we actually begin to advance. We want to create a customer experience. Customers have got more choices because they've got the information in the palm of their hands with the devices that they have. We want to create a more customer experience. We've gone a step with the e-commerce platforms that we've done and with IPMS. We want to look at how we can then begin to better manage our processes, reduce latency, reduce redundancy, create an integrated planning and monitoring and reporting platform for everybody to be able to use. Most importantly, we also want to enable our workforce, provide them with the tools of the trade that will allow them to work from anywhere. And I think when COVID came, it jostled us, it leapfrogged us to actually begin to look at that aspect of how we operate by providing the tools of the trade for people to work away from the offices. The trading partner ecosystem collaboration, saying that we know everybody's working on 4IR initiatives. We know everybody's trying to efficientize using data. We know that everybody is trying to, again, create customer centricity and create customer experience within their own environments. We're saying that an opportunity exists for us to begin to share that data, to look at how we can share that data, make it available for the use of the ecosystem, where it can be agnostically accessed and be used to make choices within the same ecosystem. And then we're saying that once we've reached that smart people's port, we need to create that digitally connected ecosystem that does not keep anybody outside, that will create a proper port community system. And again, it's not limited, it extends to other logistics chains, rail, road, everybody that gets to use the port. We have started with my other Transnet colleagues to look at how we can create this national single window system, which will be a uniform platform which will have single language, same language that will be understood by the rest of the ecosystem on how we actually operate before we embed all other technologies. So just to some of the examples or the initiatives that we've already started to do to get to that end is that we are deploying a wireless broadband communication network within the port system, and it's going to allow us to connect. When we tested it for Durban, for instance, it allowed us to connect 13 kilometers into the sea without using any sort of cable or undersea cable. We're beginning to do that. We're beginning to create what is called telematics within the port, geospatial telematics, where we can begin to ring-fence areas within the port and be able to manage them effectively. We're creating we're sensifying some of the areas in the ports to be able to give us information. We want, for example, to know how long a vessel has stayed at the berth. We want the data for berth occupancy. We want the data for anchorage. We want the data for when the vessels have come in. We want the data for how many people came into a port at a day in time. We want the data for terminal capacity utilization, but we also want to make this available. It's not limited or restricted to the use by the port. We want to make it available to allow the whole integrated planning process. We've also introduced drones. We've tested drones, and we've created a number of use cases for drone services that we want to deploy within our space. And all of this, we want to then be able to make all that information in a single layer, or what we call a persistent layer, for use via any device, via any connectivity. And we think that we're almost there. In those words, I can pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. I think as listening to your presentation, for me, one of the words that kind of kept on ringing, and it's a word that I think a lot of South Africans are using right now, is agility. And I think, having listened to you, it probably segues very nicely to a question that I have. And it's a question from Musa Ngubane. Hi, Musa. And Musa is asking basically about, what is a 360 roadmap, company roadmap that incorporates basically these new technologies into the business so for it to be agile. And so perhaps I just want you to zoom into the idea of agility, yes, in terms of technology, but also if I were to throw in my own question there, agility in terms of organizational culture. I don't know if you want to take that question, Dr. Lenhle?
I am. I haven't seen any set methodology, and I think the operative word is agility. But I can share, in our case, what we had to look at. We looked at the approach of how we renew ourselves and looking at current landscape, what we had. So we went the whole replatforming route where we're saying we need to modernize the technology footprint of infrastructure to enable us to adopt fourth industrial revolution capabilities. We looked at what we have in terms of, from the current landscape, some data interfaces that we have. How do we remediate some of the things that we have and extend some of those services so that we begin to expose the data that is there to the ecosystem, or our users in this case, the users being customers, ecosystem, and anybody else that's interested in that process. We then said, let's also revitalize, and the IPMS and order to cash systems was part of the revitalization process, where we're saying, then let's take this transaction data and begin to expose it so that the customers can make choices for themselves, and they can take that data, what they see, and make decisions on how they interact with us. And then lastly, then we said, let's clean up the system. Let's remove redundancies in the system. Let's replace what we don't need. Let's rationalize the number of systems that we have. Let's go and create a platform that will then have real-time data that will be available right across the ecosystem, where there's no ambiguity as to the source of the data, where the data comes from. So that's how we approached it in terms of us adopting 4IR. And for me, I think that's an acceptable 360 methodology for adopting 4IR for anybody who would want to consider moving there. Yes, second back to the question.
You have. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to call now. In fact, let me share this. The team earlier on, when we were offline, they were laughing at me when I was saying I was looking forward to this next presentation. And it's really about, how the impact of the fourth industrial revolution on the shipping industry. Let me just put my cards on the table. I'm a PE girl, right? And so I grew up in the space where I'm basically seeing, vessels coming in and out of that beautiful harbor. And so for me, it's really quite interesting to look at, how this revolution that we find ourselves in has really kind of, whether it's disrupted or changed or forced to adapt the shipping industry. So I want to call Lance Pullen to share his presentation with us. Lance, are you ready? Do you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you very much, Nwabisa, and thank you very much to all other panelists. I'm here to discuss the fourth industrial revolution and its impact on the shipping industry in particular. We don't have too much time, so I'm going to go into 4 specific points and hopefully not take up too much time for everyone today. As the other panelists have already alluded to, the fourth industrial, one of the main characteristics of the fourth industrial revolution is hyperconnectivity, or very, very advanced connectedness between humans, devices, robots, machines. Everything is going to be connected and communicating and sharing information with each other. Straight away, that creates a different paradigm in terms of how business is done. By sharing so much information, as the doctors pointed out, it's going to be to the wider environments as well, to the wider industry. It's not just within the established players. So what that's going to do is start allowing for a lot more collaboration rather than so much competition, which is going to take a bit of a mindset change in terms of not always wanting to compete with everyone, and we have to try rather work together and try and make everyone, the whole system better for everyone. Another aspect of the fourth industrial revolution and this connectiveness is decentralization, and it allows for not necessarily individual central command structures controlling information. It allows for various components to be able to coordinate their activities within a much larger ecosystem, which will help the whole system to be more efficient. And as I mentioned, trust is a key element of that. When we start opening or bring down the walls and allowing people to share information, we have to be able to trust those people and trust that they're not going to use our information against us and those kind of things. But I think that trust is coming in already. We're seeing the next generation is already trusting machines and computers a lot more than the older generation. So I think that's coming in already, and we just have to embrace it. When we hear about all this revolution, we start saying, what's the point? What's it trying to achieve? Why are we having revolution? And I think the two previous presenters touched on it quite nicely in terms of driving efficiencies. All the previous revolutions and steps have all been about trying to achieve a much higher level of efficiency. And I think it's something that we can't even comprehend as humans when we start comparing ourselves to supercomputers and machine learning and AI and that kind of thing. So it's a world that we struggle to comprehend as humans. But efficiency is the name of the game, and it's going to happen regardless. So we just have to embrace it and move with it. How this links then to the shipping industry in particular, I think we can, with the first characteristic of the fourth industrial revolution being connectedness and connectivity. If we look at the shipping industry, by definition, it is connecting a seller of goods to a buyer of goods. So the logistics industry and maritime in particular is fundamentally a connector, and I think it will be therefore very well aligned with the fourth industrial revolution, and the characteristics of the fourth industrial revolution will continue to go from there. So it's an exciting time, I think, particularly in the maritime industry. Then in terms of our second point, the disruptive elements of the fourth industrial revolution. And I think everyone's been talking about disruption, and we hear about COVID disruption, and everyone sort of sees disruption in a negative light. I think it depends on your perspective. Ultimately, disruption is going to happen, and we just kind of have to get used to it. But I think it's going to primarily affect people that are the established gatekeepers that have an advantage, whether it's through capital allocation or access to resources or capacity, for example, in a port. They're going to come under greater and greater pressure as there's more and more demand for the whole system to become bigger. So individual interests have to then give way to much bigger collective interests, which is going to be difficult for a lot of established players to accept. However, we see it happening already. A good example is the likes of Maersk, who effectively disrupted themselves. And they are the biggest shipping line in the world. So, I mean, for them to disrupt themselves shows that how seriously the big players are taking this, and that they have to change what they're doing and do it fundamentally differently. So I think it's going to continue from there. Then I'm kind of halfway, so I just want to make sure everyone's still with me. Hopefully I'm not talking too quickly. In terms of the specific key technological advancements that have facilitated the fourth industrial revolution, I think we have to talk about big data. It's something that has been raised with the two previous panelists. Big data is something that we're just going to have to get used to. As Dr. Lentley pointed out, excuse me, now if you imagine a port system where you've got all the straddle carriers being able to communicate with each other, and the reach stackers talking to each other, and the ship-to-shore cranes talking to each other, talking to vessels, talking to trucks. Every time something moves, it's creating a data point, which essentially is more and more data being generated on a continuous basis. So big data will continue, and it will go exponential. So our ability to collect that, to be able to store it, and to be able to index it in a way that we can use that information more meaningfully will become a very, very important skill going forward. And I think it's going to be something that we're all going to have to accept. I think on top of that, we have to talk about something like blockchain and its ability to connect buyers and sellers. It's going to continue, and I think it's a much bigger discussion, so I'm going to park that a little bit. One thing I wanted to make a specific mention of was the shipping industry's affinity to remote working. So for a lot of us that have been in the industry a while, we know that a large part of the process is actually conducted in back offices in India and the Philippines and now Mauritius and all over the world. So in a lot of respects, the shipping industry has been kind of first with that. We've been doing this for the last 10 years. But I think that's going to continue, and it's actually going to be more decentralized rather than large data sort of data back offices in central locations. That could be a variety of people working remotely all over the world. So those sort of things will change. And I think then also in terms of remote working, we have to look at then remote vessels, the ability to control vessels at sea. So those technological advancements have very much facilitated the fourth industrial revolution and its drive into the shipping industry in particular. Okay, then finally, just want to talk on, one last thing in terms of the data, something to touch on. Data-driven decision-making is becoming a bigger and bigger requirement for all companies to stay ahead, and we're seeing this even from, or no, I shouldn't say even, but from the likes of Transnet to show that they are at the forefront with the recent appointments of Ulysses Akani, who's come from the head of strategy at Uber and joined Transnet. So I think that's going to be a good sign, and it's going to show that data-driven decision-making is having a higher priority than old relationships that we used to carry in the past. So let's hope that that continues. Then finally, I think we have to talk about the environmental aspect and sustainability. I think with interconnectivity and interconnectedness of all the components of supply chains, they will be able to find and eke out those efficiencies, which will help to reduce things like emissions, and even things like ballast water being discharged incorrectly and things like that. So big data, the ability to monitor those emissions, the ability to keep track of that and provide information to authorities to be able to hold the individual players accountable, I think is going to really, really help the sustainability of the world, and I think it's something that's really going to differentiate the fourth industrial revolution from perhaps the previous revolutions, which weren't so environmentally orientated. I hope that's given everyone a nice brief overview. I'm looking forward to some questions, and I hope to get some feedback.
Lance, thank you so much. I think for me, big data, connectivity, and efficiency, I think those are really kind of for me the key takeaways from your presentation. We will come back to you a little later on in the program. I just want to with questions or perhaps any feedback. I just want to call up on from our next speaker, who's going to be talking about the role of women. Yay! The role of women and the impact of the fourth industrial revolution. Ms. Lwandile Mabuza, so please join us and share your presentation.
Thank you very much, Nwabisa, and very good morning to our audience as well as our fellow panelists. As introduced, I am Lwandile Mabuza, but I'd also like to introduce myself this morning as a daughter, a sister, a mother of wonderful twin boys, and a proud woman of this maritime industry. And while my career has largely been invested in understanding the role of private and public sectors in the development of a thriving oceans economy, today I've been requested to speak about the role of women in the maritime industry and the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution has brought about a wave of technology advancement at such a rapid pace that we have been forced to evolve in order to survive. So one of the questions when it comes to women in maritime issues, I want to pose a question. with all this evolution, why do we still hang on to ancient gender roles in the maritime industry? I believe that in order for the maritime industry to evolve towards inclusivity, we need to deconstruct the male-dominated industry stereotype and put it to bed. And when I speak about deconstructing the stereotype, I do not mean that we should diminish the contribution of the men in our industry, but rather raise the profile of the contribution of women in the industry. For example, I'll put a slide up where it clearly illustrates that in this day, from way back in the 1700s, in the Industrial Revolution, we had shipping, we had men, and we had women. And part of our journey is to discover how these worlds worked together in order for us to chart a more inclusive maritime industry. So in the first Industrial Revolution, as I hope you can see my slide, we had steamships, which really required manual labor. So we had ship stokers. And because of the hard labor that was involved, one could understand why there was an association between shipping and hard labor being a industry that was reserved for only men. Now, looking at the bottom picture, okay, I'll try and present again. I've been told that you cannot see my presentation, so we'll give it one more try. I'll unshare and then I will share again. If I can get an indication from the team, if you can see my screen yet.
We can see it. We can see it, Suzanne. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Nwabisa. So just once again, the first slide that I'm showing is just really to take the journey back into the first Industrial Revolution, the revolution of the steamship, where it all began for the maritime industry in the 1700s. Now, the role and the gender construct of the time associated the work of the steamship with this industry being separated for men only. However, we found that in the 19th century, round about in 1935, we actually did have participation of women throughout the ages, or the ages of the revolution. And through my research, I found that, the first captain of an ocean-going vessel was actually appointed, or she got her navigator's license in 1935. Now, this is something that made me sit back and think that, so having known all of this all along, where did this stereotype come from? If we had women or female captains in 1935, why is it that in 2020, we're still discussing the role of women in the maritime industry? So moving on from there, I'd like us to then think about the reasons why this was, and one of the indications is that the association between the type of work that was available in the industry and the gender construct that existed at the time made it an easy stereotype to adapt. And so I would now like to welcome us to the 20th century, where we have seen our own African ladies play key roles in berthing giant container ships, This year in March, on International Women's Day, we had for the first time ever, an entire female crew working on a ship on one of the celebrity cruise vessels. So again, I ask the question, why should the role of women be distinct in the maritime industry? What is it that in our construct that we need to deconstruct in order for us to create a space for a more inclusive environment? So some of these trends that we discuss in the fourth industrial revolution are forcing us to think differently. So Lance, together with Mutle and our captain Naresh, they've already alluded to the mega trends that are impacting this industry. And one of the things that we realize is that we have to, first of all, bridge the gap of connectivity. Now, for us to embrace this change, we need to look at the few technology trends that have been cited to watch in 2020. So the list goes, the list is very long, but the key ones really are the integrations, the API integrations, which are really the new ways to securely integrate systems and services with clients, suppliers, and partners. Again, there is artificial intelligence and robotic process automations. Now, this is just really using software to do the menial and repetitive tasks that humans are currently doing, so that we are able to focus on a more high-value work. And then again, there is the rise of green technology. Now, having to pause at this and just maybe indicating that on my side, in terms of service, we're also making waves in digital transformation. And in FY21, the Marine Division will be upgrading our operating systems to leverage off APL integration with our customers and improve customer experience. We also are exploring robotics and drone technology to enhance efficiencies in the industry. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because we understand that as an industry, we all need to move forward. And one of the important words that were used by Lance is we need to move forward together in a connected way. So the reason why we also are deciding to invest in these trends and these technologies is really to be able to connect with our customers, to better service them, and also to evolve and adapt and bring, I think, new collaboration in the industry. However, taking it back to what it means for women in the industry. Now, these APIs and robotics will replace repetitive tasks such as documentation, invoicing, mostly clerical work, which was entry-level work in the maritime industry, predominantly done by women. Now, as proponents of the fourth industrial revolution, we believe that the introduction of these technologies will lead to creation of meaningful work and higher value work rather than repetitive, mundane tasks that have to be automated. However, what this means is that the role of women in the fourth industrial revolution must first of all evolve to transcend beyond the inclusion of women in the maritime industry, but also to propel the industry towards creation of different opportunities in line with the changes brought about by the technology advancement, and also upskilling women for these new jobs and having more strategic roles for women in the industry. Now, when I was doing some research for this presentation, I came across a top 100 women in shipping ranking that was done by All About Shipping in the UK. And what led me to look at this is when we talk about new jobs for women, we talk about upskilling them, we talk about playing more strategic roles. I was curious to find out where is it that we are in the world as far as the role that is being played by the women in the industry. We know that from when I joined the industry, the jobs that are being taken over by API were the entry-level jobs that we could go into. However, I was pleasantly surprised to see that in the top 100 women in shipping in 2019, we had directors, we had deputy CEOs and CEOs, there were many funders of shipping companies, heads of departments and global operations. We had vice presidents as well as presidents. We had deputy ministers as well as ministers of shipping and maritime. We had partners, managers, executives, and captains. So this gave me hope that as we navigate through the fourth industrial revolution, we can achieve the elevation of the role of women in the industry. And one of, or some of the key takeaway points that I would like us to stop and ponder on is the role of women moving forward. So just like the women of August 1956, who collaborated in a march that changed the history of South Africa, women in the fourth industrial revolution should work together to lead this collaboration for the successful adaptation and response to the disruption, because all of it depends on connectedness and connectivity, as we heard the previous speakers. So the main takeaways are that we really should be calling for an inclusive maritime industry. Secondly, we should be calling for creation of different and high-value opportunities for women. Thirdly, we ought to be upskilling women for the new jobs that will emanate from the adaptation to these mega trends, such as data analytics versus the current data capturing that women are doing in the industry. We should be upskilling them for value-orientated processes versus the back and front office services that they are currently performing. We should also be leading collaboration. A lot of the speakers spoke about trust, they spoke about relationships, and women should really be at the forefront of that collaboration. And last month, we spoke a lot about collaboration and following the example of how the women of 56 came together and in collaboration and brought about major change. And so we believe that the women in this day can do the same. And so the responsibility and the role of women to develop trust relationships and networks that will enable the sharing of data, the sharing of APIs and trusted relationships that are so required for the single window solutions will solely rest on the shoulders of women. Because in my experience, and I can only speak from my worldview, in my experience, since I joined the industry in 2004, I have had nothing but the best experience in terms of collaborating with women. And my career, I can proudly say, was built from an elevated platform by other women in the industry, where women who had gone before us took on a challenge to pay it forward. And they introduced us to the industry in ways that we had never imagined. So again, I speak to all the women in the industry. This is our time to lead. This is our time to raise our profile, to be seen, to actively engage each other and collaborate on solutions for the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you.
It is our time to leave. Lwandile, thank you so much. What I like about what you're saying is, if I were to capture it in one sentence, is that you're calling on the sector to be far more deliberate in the duty of inclusion of women, but also in ensuring that women are given, as you put it, high value opportunities. So thank you so much for that. We'll come back with questions in a short while. I just want to throw it out to Nwabisa Matoti, who's going to be speaking to us about skills development in this sector. And I want to remind you, if you are watching us, please feel free to put your questions or comments on the platforms at which you are watching, particularly the Vimeo link from where most of you are watching us. We'll try and filter through those questions to our panelists. Nwabisa, do you want to take it from here, Susan?
Thank you, Gama, for that introduction. I've been given a brief about speaking on the skills development and the multi-generational workforce advancement in maritime industry, covering the following points: the role of the labor market data insights in addressing the skills gaps in the maritime industry. Secondly, the evolution of the maritime skills development locally and globally. And lastly, the role of 4IR in maritime skills development, as well as the impact of COVID on maritime education and training. Regarding the first point on the role of labor market data, I will not go into much detail in the interest of time, rather. But I just want to say that when Operation Pakistan was launched in 2014, SAIME was given a mandate by DHET to drive the maritime education and training initiatives for Operation Pakistan on their behalf. And that process entailed us as SAIME establishing working groups aligned to the different focus areas of Operation Pakistan. And in that process, the working groups were tasked with identifying the skills that are required for each focus area. That process entailed engagement with industry and also a process of triangulation with various data sets from SETAs and relevant government departments and other institutions. And we also did some work in 2018, research, which looked at the supply and demand for skills in the oceans economy, which utilized the LMIP, which is the Labor Market Intelligence Project, which is a partnership between DHET and the Human Sciences Research Council, which basically looks at scenario planning to project the future skills needs for the country. So we utilize that methodology for our research, which is available on our website. So in response to that question, you can consult our website and also look at what work we have done in that regard. So I'll start with my presentation. In terms of the background for maritime skills development has been identified as one of the key drivers of growth for the maritime industry globally, as evident in the different maritime skills studies that have been conducted, which identified a number of trends and key issues that need to be addressed globally. These include, amongst others, the mismatch between the demand and supply for skills, the increasing age of maritime professionals. The studies found that the high-level positions in the maritime industry were mainly occupied by people who are much older, who are white and male. So which called for the need to change in terms of transformation and also looking at strategies to address that issue. The third challenge was that of skills retention, as well as the impact of technological innovation in terms of how do we adjust to that, which is a topic for discussion today. The solutions that were proposed and were implemented by various maritime nations included the introduction or launch of maritime awareness campaigns to actually sensitize the public of the opportunities within the maritime sector. The partnership, encouraging partnerships between maritime training institutions and industry, which is very key for the kind of work that we do as SAIME as well, because we need to ensure that we do not train for unemployment and ensure that the skills that we have identified and initiatives that we're actually driving are aligned to what the industry requires. And that process also enables us to engage with industry to actually facilitate work placement opportunities for the learners that we are working with. And in terms of the issue of the aging maritime professionals, there have been proposals to look at knowledge transfer interventions as well as succession planning. But the level of implementation regarding to those interventions needs to be further investigated. And lastly, in order for us to adapt to the changing technological environment, we need to identify the skills that will be required and the training required thereof. In terms of the local landscape, I started in 2011, not to say that there were not initiatives prior to that, but around 2010, 2011, that is a time where the call for coordination and interventions to address the maritime skills development challenges became more pronounced. With SAMHSA driving the maritime skills development agenda at that time through various initiatives like the Maritime Skills Development Study, the Maritime Skills Summit that they organized, the launch of the National Cadet Program, and in 2012, they launched the IALA-LEVEL as a training vessel for those cadets. And in 2013, there was a call for us to have a national coordinating body or institute to drive the maritime education and training initiatives, or a university, maritime university. But the feasibility study that was conducted by SAMHSA at that time recommended that we should rather look at a national institute because it will take a long time for us to establish a university. And in that year as well, the Human Resources Development Council formed the Maritime Skills Technical Task Team to look at the blockages within the skills development pipeline in the maritime sector, as well as the interventions to address those blockages. The report of that task team was delivered to the presidency in 2014, and it also coincided with the launch of the Operation Pakisa in July 2014. This resulted in the launch of SAIME in November 2014 to coordinate those maritime education and training initiatives, as well as Operation Pakisa initiatives on behalf of DHET. I will not go too much into the slide. It's a busy slide, I know, but as I mentioned earlier on, part of the work that we did when we established the working group, and also the skills studies that we did subsequent to that, identified the skills that are required for the different focus areas of Operation Pakisa. But if you look at the skills that are identified here, the bulk of them do not necessarily speak to the 4IR. Some of them do, but we need, therefore, to actually review the work that we have done in this regard to make sure that we are ready for the 4IR revolution. Moving on to the 4IR disruption that we've been talking about and the need for us to change. Our colleagues have talked about how it has impacted the maritime industry through smart ports and also the autonomous shipping that has been talked about, which makes skills development as an important enabler for ensuring that the industry is ready for automation and autonomous shipping. And this talk about autonomous vessels has actually received a lot of attention from various spheres, including academia. And this has actually increased the calls for a need for us to change the traditional models of training, recruiting, and also retaining talent, as well as doing the way we do business. So it is important for us to identify what are the skills that are needed in the future for us to be able to conduct training on, and also looking at the gap analysis of the existing workforce so that we can address those gaps. The World Maritime University conducted a study last year, 2019, on autonomous shipping, and it identified the critical competencies that are needed for the 4IR revolution. These included, amongst others, data analysis, automation, cybersecurity, robotics, computer programming, simulation rather, as well as the non-technical skills like problem solving, the ability to work with remote teams, change management, stress management, communication management, as well as leadership skills. So we need to have the interventions locally as well for us to be able to adjust to those changing technological needs. And those interventions need to start at basic education level with the increased access to technology, or computers, and also a focus on the STEM subjects, which is the science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And various studies have found that we are not faring well in that regard. And lastly, we need to also look at how we ensure that our education and training policies are able to adapt, because there is a lead time in formulating and implementing policies and training, which would actually impact, have a result in a shortfall in the resources that are required for IR. Looking at employment, the employment aspects, the WMU as well has indicated that the automation is most likely to least affect the duties that are executed by the highly skilled individuals. Yes, unfortunately, there will be some redundancies, but there is a distinction between the role of the human and the role of the system among the various system functions. So the human element will still be required during this 4IR revolution. So there will be job opportunities that are going to come up throughout this process. And unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier on, there will be job displacements and the widening skills gaps that need to be addressed. As SAIMI, we have embarked on a process in order to adapt or to align to the changing environment, where we are in the process of establishing a marine robotics center, which will have a unit at the University of Cape Town and another unit at the Nelson Mandela University. And the main objective of that center is to contribute towards the building of institutional and national capacity in the area of marine robotics through research and also short learning programs. I've been also asked to talk about the impact of COVID on maritime education and training. As we're all aware, the academic program was halted in March 2020 due to the lockdown, with the minister advising that where possible, online learning should continue. But upon engagement with various institutions, we were informed that as at end June 2020, online teaching platforms only reached about 20% on average in terms of the students, due to the shortages of data and devices for both students and staff. And even those people that had devices, they had experienced limited network signals, which limited the access to online learning. They've informed us that there will be no exams for 2020, so all assessments will be based on continuous assessments for all the programs. In terms of the new applications for enrollment, the grade 11 results will be utilized. And the other cause for concern was the emotional and mental wellness of staff and students in terms of them struggling to adjust to the new norm of online learning and working from home. So there are various interventions that have been implemented in that regard. Looking at industry, the industry impact, our engagement with some of the industry partners that we're working with, they indicated that due to the revenue knock, they are cutting back on various line items that will include recruitment as well as training. And they even indicated to us that some of the trainees that were actually placed on their premises may not be able to come back. And those that will be taken back will be based on the needs of the certain projects. In terms of seafarer training, prior to the changes in crew exchange regulations, they were required to, some of them were required to stay at sea for extended period of time, which affected their emotional and mental well-being. And also the restrictions on air travel had actually presented a challenge in terms of getting them back to work, whether they're going to work or whether they're going back for training. And also in terms of research expeditions, the vessels were also brought to a house, and this will require the contracts of those researchers and their timelines for the projects to be extended. In terms of how we are going to address these challenges, or how these challenges are being addressed currently, rather, is that SAMSA, for instance, has extended the validity of the CIFRAS certificates until 30 September and has also allowed the online submissions of applications for learner assessments. The industry and academic institutions have actually implemented comprehensive COVID-19 plans covering the PPE, the screening, social distancing, and for all the training and initiatives that they are involved in. And furthermore, SAIMI is fully funded by the National Skills Fund, and they have indicated to us that they will be supporting us in terms of covering the additional costs that come with the consequences of COVID-19. I've spoken about the counselling as part of the interventions that are being implemented by various institutions to address the mental and mental welfare of the students as well as the staff. The universities have actually extended the academic calendar as well. Some of them will extend it until March next year. And what is also relevant for this discussion is that the advent of COVID-19 has forced us to put measures in place for blended learning with the procurement of data and devices, as I mentioned before, and also the quality assurance bodies like the QCDO has also issued a policy framework for blended learning. So in addition to that, this has actually forced us to fast-track the implementation of learning methods as well as simulator training. And proposals have been made to SAMSA as well to actually consider including simulator training as part of C-time. In conclusion, the automation, the 4IR, as changing technology environment has forced us to change the way we do work, and the labor force will have to adapt to those changes, as well as the education and training systems in order to prepare the workforce for those anticipated roles. This includes the skills, competencies that need to evolve to adapt to these advancements, and also the maritime administrators will need to be more flexible in terms of the seafarer education and training curriculum. Collaboration is key. Investment in research is also very key during this process, as well as capacity building for both teacher development as well as lecturer development, including regulators, capacity to deal with the 4IR changes that will come on board. As well, the infrastructure as well, investment in infrastructure and equipment for MET is also key in this process. In conclusion, lastly, we will also have to look at the review, as I mentioned earlier on, of training policy frameworks, and also the COVID-19, which is also very relevant for our discussion today, has actually made us to adjust to the new norm of doing things very quickly, and made us to fast-track the processes for e-learning, for the preparation for our needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you have borrowed us an hour and a half of your time, and we apologize that we will like to steal just 5 more minutes of this conversation. I do think, and I probably will agree with me, that it's been jam-packed. So let's do this. I'm going to give our panelists 1 minute each, and I'm going to be very strict and ask them to please keep to the 1 minute. And I'll pose a question that has come through, which has been sifted obviously by the team, and they've kind of sent the questions through to us. And let me start with Nwabisa. There's a question here that's basically asking what job opportunities are there in the logistics for logistic graduates in the maritime industry. 1 minute, and we can move on.
Thank you, Nwabisa. There are various opportunities that could be explored by graduates in the sector for logistics. This includes the career opportunities, for instance, the shipping agent, ship chandling, there's freight forwarding, there's freight management, there's distribution in logistics. The list is endless. And there are a variety of companies in the sector, maritime sector, that actually take on graduates. I've got a list here with me, and I would like to ask the person who asked the question to actually email me so that I can provide her with a list of companies that she should actually contact to see if there are opportunities for her in that regard.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I love the fact that you actually are willing to take the question offline as well. I want to throw it to Lance. There's a question here for you, which I think is a good one. It says, how do we integrate various systems and data from port stakeholders without compromising confidentiality or competitive advantages of individual players? Lance, do you want to take that question? You've got 1 minute.
Sure, let's do it quickly. Thanks very much, Conrad. I really like this question because it opens up a much bigger discussion about what is a competitive advantage from an economic perspective. If we say, or economic theory, an example where there's one player that has all the information and they're the only ones that know about who the suppliers are and who the customers are. Their competitive advantage is that they have all the information. But it's a major competitive disadvantage to the whole market. So now this is where the market's going to start saying, hang on, is one player's individual right to a competitive advantage, does that trump the whole market's ability to function better? So just a short answer, I think it's going to ask bigger questions, and when we say competitive advantages or confidentiality, we have to ask why, and what is the basis for that? And hopefully that answers the question for Conrad.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to throw it out to Lwandile Mabuza. There's a question here, which is that, it talks about inclusivity, but not necessarily for women, but it talks about BEE. So the question is, what is the role of BBEE mean for the ocean transport sector in the South African context? And they're saying, because the sector itself is international. So how does it matter? How does it play out, that you are perhaps a level X BE, but you pretty much are playing in an international platform?
Thank you very much, Nwabisa, and thank you for the question. And just shortly, whether maritime sector is an international business, there are various variations of BE, internationally. So it is a much required and welcome disruption for South Africans who received it late, but in the world globally, it has been happening. So with the recent amendment of the maritime sector BE codes, we will see, I think, a big shift in terms of meaningful participation of players in the industry rather than just compliance. So in FY21, the BE levels are no longer going to put you, I think, on the competitive edge. However, your participation in meaningful transformation is what will pose you to be a partner that everyone wants to be reckoned with. So doing business has far changed in South Africa. And I think the recognition of transformational efforts will be a competitive and leading advantage in FY21 and going forward.
Thank you so much, Lwandile. There's a question I'd like to throw to Captain Naresh. You did touch obviously on transformation in your presentation. There's a question here saying, congratulations for training the first Black female port captain. But the question is, how many more Black female captains, pilots, engineers have been trained by Transnet National Ports Authority?
Thank you for that question. Just in terms of the information that we have, and I think maybe the start was slow in terms of the transformation for females as well, where there was one, I think, in the first group of class of 99, Teresa Williams, that was part of this. But remember, as the time went on, we've increased the numbers, and in terms of our female contribution now to the critical grades in the maritime sector in TNPA, we have a total of 39% of females that have critical functions in the organization. But remember, this all stems from the highest person in the organization, from Portia Derby, the Group CE, and it's filtered down to the TNPA as well. And we not only look at the maritime side of it in terms of the water side, but also on the port environment as well. We also have 3 general managers in Transnet National Ports Authority. There's quite a few executives, female executives, 3 port managers, and in terms of harbour masters that have been trained, there's 4 harbour masters in the port system, 6 deputy harbour masters, 4 marine operations managers, many other grades as well in terms of marine safety, VTS, berthing, shore hands, tug masters, pilots. So I think we've done quite well in terms of going across the entire levels of the organization, not just concentrating on one or the other. But like I think Wandile said as well, we must not focus too much, I think, in terms of looking at our efforts. It must be a national thing, that where we need to make sure that this flows on to the entire organization, and it must be a day-to-day thing, a normal, not looking at it in a specific manner. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Captain. And the last question I want to throw to you, Ntate Motle, is, it's basically saying that you obviously, TNPA is a major employer sort of in this sector. Do you believe that there's more that needs to be done, particularly from a school level, to really kind of help our kids, to embrace and understand and learn, new technologies, and how do we begin to do that? I think Nobis had started that question about, STEM subjects, etc. What more do you believe needs to be done?
Thank you, Nobis. Unfortunately, South Africa has been lagging when it came to adoption of fourth industrial revolution. And the schooling system is also a big contributor to that lag. If you look at what we call first world countries or progressive countries like Singapore, Malaysia, India, the US, they started a long time ago to include this in the curriculum from the early learning. And they've made it part of their curriculum going forward. The adoption of things like data science and advanced analytics and machine learning has become part of the DNA, because this is what they're now using to change it. So I think the one weakness that we probably have, and this is my opinion, is that from the people that should be leading the initiative, we have quite a very old leadership when it comes to government. And we need to start cascading some of those responsibilities to younger, more energetic people that are going to lead the charge in terms of technology adoption going forward. And the schools should also be geared for that, right from primary. I know that there are, in the private sector, some of the private schools are beginning to teach robotics at a very early age when children join. In our public schools, I don't think we have that at the moment. And the infrastructure that you require to actually adopt some of these technologies is very sparse. It's limited to those that can afford. So there needs to be some kind of, I would say, government intervention to assist, to not regulate so much that area, but to assist to push some of initiatives that will see those industries being easy to get into, as we highlighted earlier. The opportunity is there. It's how you grab it. There's a dearth of skill as far as the STEM learning is concerned. We haven't taught that in a very long time. The whole schooling system, the whole curriculum should probably be overhauled if we're going to be meeting the requirements for South Africa in the future. So it depends also from where you look at it. The public sector, the private sector is trying to adopt new ways of advancing education. The public sector is unfortunately terribly lagging as far as it is concerned. So that's where we are, and we need the intervention. We need it now.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I was going to say, and I think we definitely need intervention, and it has to be deliberate intervention. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm not even going to waste any more of your time. Thank you for borrowing us your time. Thank you for being with us throughout this conversation. Thank you to the panelists who have shared some wonderful insights for this conversation. We really do appreciate your time. I'd like to say look out for more webinars that are and virtual events that will be hosted by the Transnet Ports Authority. I'd like to thank them for trusting me with this conversation and saying to you at home on all our platforms, Happy Heritage Month and Happy World Maritime Day, which is coming up on the 24th of September. And most importantly, do keep safe in these times. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.